Functions are a way of packaging functionality that you wish to reuse. It's possible to define a body of code as a function that executes when you call the function name in your code. This is a good alternative to repeatedly writing the same code. You have already seen some uses of functions previously. For example, let my variable equal document.querySelector h1 or alert hello. These functions document.querySelector and alert are built into the web browser. A JavaScript function is defined with the function keyword followed by a name followed by parentheses. Function names can contain letters, digits, underscores, and dollar signs. Same rules as variables. The parentheses may include parameter names that will be separated by commas. The code to be executed by the function is placed inside curly brackets. JavaScript function syntax. You begin with the function keyword followed by a name followed by parentheses. Inside these parentheses, we can have parameters or multiple parameters which will be separated with commas followed by curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets, that's where you are meant to insert the code to be executed. Function parameters are listed inside the parentheses in the function definition. Function arguments are the values received by the function when it is invoked. Function arguments are the values received by the function when it is invoked. Inside the function, the arguments behave as local variables. The code inside the function will execute when something calls the function. When an event occurs, that is when a user clicks a button, when it is called from a JavaScript code and automatically, that is how you execute functions, either by the click of a button or when you call it from a JavaScript code or when it is self-invoked. You will learn a lot more about function invocation later in this tutorial. When JavaScript reaches a return statement, the function will stop executing. If the function was called from a statement, JavaScript will return to execute the code after invoking the statement. Functions often compute a return value. The return value is returned back to where it is called. Example: calculate the product of two numbers and return the result. So we said let x equal to my function and then we pass two arguments. The first is 4 and the second is 3. So we created a variable x and we assigned the value as the invocation of the my function. Then we pass two arguments that we want to multiply. So this is where we are creating the function. You can see that we started with the function keyword followed by the function name, which is my function in this instance, and then two parameters. The first is a and the second we named it b. So inside the curly braces, that's where we have the code that is going to be executed. And what we want this function to do is to return the multiplication of the first value and the second value. So the result in x when we run this particular code will be 12, which is 4 times 3. Why do we need functions? If you define the code once, you can use it many times. Functions help us to reuse code. You can use the same code many times with different arguments, that's with different values to produce different results. If you see something which looks like a variable name but it is followed by parentheses, it is most likely a function. Functions often take arguments, that is the bits of data they need to do their job. Arguments go inside the parentheses, separated by commas if there is more than one argument. For example, the alert function makes a pop-up box appear inside the browser window, but we need to give it a string as an argument to tell the function what message to display. You use alert to display pop-up in your web pages. So the alert function requires an argument, which is the message that you need to be displayed in that pop-up. In the next example, we create a simple function which takes two numbers as arguments and multiplies them. Okay, so let's try to run this in our console and test with several arguments. So I'm going to open a new tab and then open developer tools by clicking this inspect button, and then I go to the console tab. So first of all, I need to copy this function. I'll paste it and then, okay, next slide. So we need to test that function with several arguments. The first one I'm going to be testing with is 4 and 7. Notice that as I paste it, that particular code was executed and then I passed two arguments. The first is 4 and the second is 7. So what this function is doing is to multiply whatever I have in this first argument by whatever is in the second argument. So that gives us 4 times 7, which will output 28. So multiply 20, 20. So I'm going to type this out instead of pasting. Multiply 20, comma 20. That's all. So the function has multiplied the first value by the second argument. 0 times 20 is 0. 10 times 20 is 200. Functions can be used the same way you use variables in all types of formulas, assignments, and calculations. Instead of using a variable to store the return value of a function, you can use the function directly as a variable value. In this example, we said let x is equals to Celsius 77. And then when I said let x is equal to the temperature is whatever is returned from calling this to Celsius function. So instead of doing all this in two lines, we can just use one single line by using the function directly. We just say let text is equals to the temperature is, and then we open quotes. Okay, the temperature is, notice that this is a string because there are quotation marks there. The temperature is enclosed in quotes marks, and then we use plus. This is called string concatenation. We're going to look at this in details in the coming videos. So plus to Celsius, and then we'll pass the 77 arguments, and then another concatenation and another string. Variables declared within a JavaScript function become local to the function. What are local variables? Local variables are variables that can only be accessed from within the function. Example, Let's car name is equals to Volvo. So this is a local variable. You can only use this variable inside this function called my function. You can't use it anywhere outside that function. Since local variables are only recognized inside their functions, variables with the same name can be used in different functions. Isn't that awesome? Yes, it is. Local variables are created when a function starts and they are deleted when the function is completed.